teleological argument, essentially the argument of design, the fact that the universe is designed with a purpose. Now, I've heard multiple kind of ways that this story is related, about Abu Hanifa arguing with either philosophers or arguing with atheists. This one is the only kind of attributable version, but you may have heard the story in which Abu Hanifa was asked to debate some atheists, and he had to cross the Euphrates to reach the palace in which he would find the atheist to argue with. So the atheist is waiting in the palace. They're waiting for a long time until finally Abu Hanifa appears, and they're frustrated about, okay, why did you take so long? And so Abu Hanifa relates this story in which he described a ship assembling itself, so a ship to cross the river, a ship assembling itself. It's loading itself, it's unloading itself. No one's sailing it, no one's controlling it. And Abu Hanifa, he kind of funnily says, well, that's why, I took so long. So Abu Hanifa, he challenges the atheist. He's like, what I've just described, a ship putting itself together, the trees coming down, the wood turning into planks, the planks coming together to form a ship, and a ship sailing itself without a guide. Can you believe this? The atheists, they go, that's impossible. So Abu Hanifa turns it around on them and says, okay, if you can't believe that a tree falls down on its own, chops itself up into planks, assembles itself into a ship, and sails itself, how can you then say that the universe just assembled itself on its own? So the teleological argument makes clear that the universe is designed for a purpose. The fact that millions of variables come together to make an earth that human beings can inhabit, can go from birth to death without anything going wrong. All those millions of variables fine-tuned in such a way that we can survive through, whether hundreds of thousands of years or millions of years on Earth. It's more credible to believe that this universe was designed with a purpose rather than just sheer random chance. So that is the second argument, which is the teleological argument, an argument that the universe was created with a purpose and was designed with precision by a creator. Now, with atheism also comes secularism. So secularism is the worldview, the Aqidah, that one should segregate, they should keep their religious life separate from all other parts of their life. So, in other words, behave like a Muslim when you enter the masjid, but the moment you step out of the masjid, throw Islam over your shoulder. You don't have to behave like a Muslim. That is essentially what secularism is. Now, one of the problems with secularism is when you decide to divorce yourself from Islam, for example, you're also saying that there is no objective moral authority or Furqan, a standard, and this leads to what's called moral relativism. So in other words, the way I decide to do things, I have my truth and you have your truth. This is what secularism encourages in people. Now, the problem with not having a moral objective authority, and I remember I had a conversation with Grayler and Logan, this was months ago, in this very masjid. Moral relativism, you'll hear atheists and secularists, they'll say, well, I'm a good person. I'll give money to the homeless person on the street, and I'll smile, and I'll greet you. And it's like, okay, that's very basic behaviors. Honestly, a lot of animals do something similar, But if you don't have an objective moral authority, then when it comes to conflicts between people, you're going to be lost. Because if I'm saying, well, you know, my truth is my truth, and let's say, you know, I have some sort of competition or some sort of conflict, wa alaikum salam, with Omar, with Muhammad, with Ammar, well, if we each have our own truths, things begin to break down whenever we have some sort of conflict with one another. Oftentimes, you'll find secularists, they may not say it outright, but they essentially believe in, you know, survival of the fittest, where it's just like, you know what, I have a conflict with Muhammad, well, he better stop me because I'm going to have my way. You're going to have breakdown of society when you don't have that objective moral authority, that criterion. Now, this part, if you guys were at the first Jummah on Friday, Muhammad, you gave the khutbah, and I remember distinctly you were discussing the issue of minor shirk. And I remember in your khutbah, you know, you gave one example in which, you know, somebody enters the masjid to pray, and, you know, the moment somebody else walks in, they kind of tidy up the way that they perform the salah. And that was an example of minor shirk, because you are taking Allah out of the equation of why do I do what I do, and you're placing, for example, other people's pleasure up there. Now, with secularism, there's a lot of things that people are putting up as idols. It could be money, it could be carnal desires, it could be material gain. Secularism is going to lead inevitably to you putting something else on the pedestal of your worship, of what you deem to be the most important thing. That, because human beings, we're wired like that. We're going to, you know, we're going to set some reason up that drives our daily lives, drives our goals, drives our pursuits. And you have to be careful with removing Allah from that and putting something else on that pedestal, where it's just, you know, all I care about is making as much money as I can, of, you know, gaining as much material as I can. And unfortunately, this secularist mindset, and Anwar and I were actually having a conversation not too long ago about this. Secularism in a lot of these different aqa'id, nobody's going to outright say, I'm a secularist. But they're going to do actions that fall in line with replacing Allah from, you know, that ultimate pursuit, and putting something else like money, like sex, like material gain up there. And once again, people are not going to, you know, say, oh, I'm a secularist, but once again, their motives, their drives, their actions all come as a consequence of them having replaced Allah with something else that motivates them, that drives them. And oftentimes, when you replace that moral objective authority, that criterion, that furqan, you're going to see more and more people engage in crime, in abuses of the community, abnormal behaviors. Yeah.
Now, when you say that they don't necessarily would say out loud that, hey, I'm a secular, is it because they admit to being a secular but they wouldn't say it, or is it just something that they don't recognize, oh, I'm being a secular?
They don't recognize, like, they're not going to call it a formal term.
Right.
Like we call ourselves Muslim.
Yeah.
We submit to Allah.
Yeah.
A lot of the other aqa'id, they kind of creep in such a way that you don't, like, I'm not going to be known as a agnostic or a secularist, but their motives, their actions show that something else other than Allah is what's motivating them, what's driving them. You know, so like the conversation that Anwar and I had, you know, the people engaging in these behaviors, yeah, you won't be able to pull them aside and say, what are you? Oh, I'm a secular. No. And even so, they may even, oh, I'm Muslim, but once again, their motives, their actions are showing that you've got something else that you worship other than Allah. And that's the thing with minor shirk, is slowly just kind of replacing Allah with something else that's motivating you. Going back to the example in the Jummah khutbah, the person performing the salah and somebody comes in and they tidy up. They previous to the guy entering, they weren't tidying up their salah for Allah, but the moment somebody else came in, I have to show off. So let me make sure my thobe is straight and my salah is straight. The problem with secularism is it also, and the way it affects Muslims is, the deen is not, and I hate when this word is used, the deen is not a religion, it's a way of life. Your deen is not just the salah, it's not just giving the zakat, it's not just fasting during Ramadan. It's how you come into your home, how you keep your home clean, how you keep the relations with your family, with your friends, the way you're driving out in the street, the way you go to the souk, the market. All of that, the deen gives us a moral and objective moral criterion on how to behave in all of those settings, everything that we believe, everything that we say. Secularism would tell you, well, in the mosque, I'll be a Muslim, salah, all that. The moment you step out of the mosque, don't even worry about it. Don't worry about how you behave, how you treat others. And once again, I'm not sitting here making like takfir or anything like that, but it is something that we need to keep in mind. Number one, Allah should be the only one we worship. The motivation for all of our thoughts, our words, our deeds. We turn to the Quran and Sunnah. We don't turn to any other ism or ideology. None of that. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah.
We got a couple questions.
Yeah.
I was gonna say this is different than somebody inspiring someone to do the good or influencing someone to do the good. Because Allah could use anyone to change somebody's heart, to guide somebody back to Islam. Or somebody's praying all the time. Oh, he's praying all the time. That might encourage me. Someone controls their own intention, whether it's donating, whether it's doing good. That's different from the.
Yes, it is. One thing that I want people to consider is I've heard these conversations. I've had these conversations. Well, why do you talk about for example, Aqidah? Why do you talk about the Quran and Sunnah? It's like, yeah, that's a given. It's like, oh, you may think it's a given, but we need to constantly remind ourselves or constantly reflect, what is driving my behavior, my thoughts, my words, my deeds. We have to be careful about, for example, the minor shirk, where it's like slowly you might be edging Allah out of the equation and replacing Allah with something else, whether it's people's opinions of you, material gain. I notice, and it's unfortunate that it's just like, I'm Muslim and it's like that's it. It's like, oh yeah, you're Muslim, but you need to constantly be on guard of anything, trying to influence you away from the Aqidah of Islam. And in this country, like I said, and I told Anwar, you pull somebody who has a secularist mindset, more often than not, they're not like, I'm a secularist. Usually they, these kind of ideologies are more kind of under the radar. They're more insidious, where it's like they'll slowly influence you without being kind of in your face about it.
It's kind of like, this is gonna be a very weird example. It's like someone who's a narcissist. They're not gonna actively say, hey, I'm a narcissist, but the way that they behave, Like, yeah.
That's actually a good example.
I think in Muslims country as a secularism is they don't want people to know they are secularism, and the way will not be neglected from the community.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw one of interview one lady. She's a actress.
Mm.
She said Allah yuhibbul jamal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He likes to be beautiful. That's why I'm showing my body to I'm a beautiful. So, but if you tell her this is wrong, this is not allowed, this is not, she brought something to be in Allah jameel yuhibbul jamal. So a lot of the secularism in Muslim country, but in the way they put Islam between. So you don't ask them, no, you are kafir, you are this, you are not. A lot of stories about this. Yeah. Or he said, depends for the heart. My heart is good, but I will not pray 5 times. So, but when you tell him this is wrong, you will be out of the Islam. He doesn't like that, so he hiding himself. Maybe he will come Jum'ah prayer to pray to show I'm Muslim, but in the way I'm not following what the Quran and Sunnah say.
So the biggest point about secularism, even in that example, is following human desire, right? Prioritizing human desire over the Sunnah and what our Islam tells us to prioritize.
I know you had a question, and I got you next.
Yeah, so I was just gonna ask if you or anyone has experience in dealing with these type of people, how would you, whether it's in an argument or like in a debate or something, how would you present this information to the other person? How would you say, like, how would you show them that in fact what they're prioritizing is not Allah, rather it's these other gods?
So you're more so asking, like, how do you kind of discuss the issue with secularists?
Sure, that as well as how do you find it within yourself?
I mean, the first piece of advice I would give, and this is something that I kind of learned from going through the university, where you had exposure to both atheists and secularists, is you need to approach them with like conviction first and foremost, where you're not you're not doubting yourself, but you're speaking plainly, you're speaking with conviction. Typically people respond better if they, from your body language, from your tone, from the way you're discussing with them, that you're very sure on what you're discussing with them. Now, for example, and I'm just kind of thinking about these different like scenarios, if they're Muslim but they have this kind of secularist mindset, I would take to them proofs from the Quran and Sunnah regarding the fact that Islam is more than just, okay, you're inside the masjid, you act one way, outside the masjid, you act another way, or the idea that, oh, Islam is, just a religion, like it's just the rituals, and I can behave differently if, say, I'm at the market or I'm at school. No, I mean, make it plain to them that the Deen of Islam it's a complete way of life. Maybe they don't have exposure, for example, to, fiqh, for example, where you have, different scenarios, you have jurisprudence on how to behave, how to, do something in a particular setting. Maybe they need to understand that part. Is there any other pieces of advice that you would give? I got you next. I promise. Or do you have an example?
No.
Okay, I got you next.
Yeah, I think it's tricky because are you asking if you're talking to a Muslim or someone who follows, comes from a Muslim family, but has these traits, and you're trying to like make it clear to them that they have it, or
Yeah.
that's
Who else could this apply to?
everyone. It could be
Who
anyone,
else
right?
could this apply to that isn't namely would name themselves a Muslim?
But that's what we're saying. Like, it doesn't matter what your background is. No one kind of labels themselves as a secularist. It's more of an idea. We call it an aqidah because once you get to that level and that, you know, overtakes everything else that you believe in, then that becomes like your religion. But nobody's going out there and calling themselves that.
One thing I would, and now that I'm just, you know, kind of thinking a little further, because I'm looking back at like my experience in like college, for example. You know, once again, no, I'm not throwing anybody under the bus, but you would encounter Muslims who clearly didn't have much education about their deen beyond, you know, my parents are Muslim, I'm Muslim. It's like what I'll do is I'll encourage them to seek out, you know, the local scholars, whether it's, you know, Imam Wasif back in the day, Abu Nur. I would, you know, encourage them to sit at their feet and to learn that, once again, okay, you know, Islam is not just like a name that you're sticking as a label, but it's a comprehensive way to live your life. For a lot of, you know, especially the younger folks who are maybe their parents didn't take them to the masjid, I mean, yeah, I mean, they're not going to have that much exposure, but to the best of my ability, I would try to help expose them to understanding Islam comprehensively. Now, obviously, I'm not a scholar, so I'll make that clear to them, but, you know, you should get in touch with, you know, Imam Abu Nur, Imam Wasif, so on and so forth, and make it clear that Islam is a comprehensive way of life, not just, okay, just these few rituals that you just know by name, and maybe you saw your parents do them. Okay, no problem. We'll start from, you know, square one, similar to like if I'm teaching a new Muslim, like somebody who just took their Shahada, not in a derogatory or rude way, but in a way where it's like, look, I want to help you, and you know, I'll sit down with him in that way. More often than not, and I'm only speaking about the local community, a lot of it is just base ignorance. It's not like a purposeful, oh, you know, I don't feel like practicing Islam. It's more so they just didn't have the exposure. And so in that regard, look, I'll sit with you. For anything I can't answer, I'm going to refer you to one of the local scholars and just try to develop them in that way. Hopefully that answers the question. Oh yeah, all right. Let me?
Yeah. So what am I getting is like the secularist, his mindset is like, I'm just gonna separate between deen and dunya, like that, like what we're saying here in America, separation between church and state, right?
That tends to be what people like immediately jump to when you say like secularism, but it's more than just that, because that's just about like the U.S. government, but that's not like
that's
everyday
why I was
life.
confused by all of this because I was like, I thought that was just kind of like a political mindset of like segregating like politics from like influencing faith and vice versa.
That's a very specific example when it comes to like the U.S. Constitution, but generally secularism seeks to confine the fact that, okay, as Muslims, we know that the Quran and Sunnah guides us in all of our interactions, whether it's the rights that Allah has over us, the rights that people have over each other. Secularism will basically tell you that, okay, just confine your practice to, you know, the masjid, and you step out of it, the way you behave, the way you drive, the way you treat your parents, the way you treat everybody, you know, just based on your own desire.
Yeah.
You know, so if I'm waking up on the right side of the bed, okay, I'll be nice to Lameen. But today I woke up on the wrong side of the bed, so you know what? I'm going to mistreat him. Is that from the Quran and Sunnah? No. But secularism will basically instruct you that outside of, you know, the masjid, you're free to do whatever you want. Don't worry about applying the Quran and Sunnah, and that's not the haqq. The Quran and Sunnah guides us in all of our interactions, how we treat ourselves, how we treat our family, how we treat each other, obviously the rights that Allah has over us, but also beyond that. It's not just, you can't just be Muslim when it comes to the Salah, and then in every other aspect of your life, I don't care what the Quran and Sunnah says. That's terrible. But that is what secularism would expect you to behave or to operate like, is don't worry about the Quran and Sunnah and everything except for come into the masjid, okay, yeah.
Can we say that's munafiq?
My Arabic is not the best.
Hypocrite.
They choose parts
I
of
mean,
the others.
Munafiq. Sorry, I thought you said muwafiq, so I was confused.
Kind of.
It's definitely probably
It is,
in a way.
It is
It is-
nifaq to an extent.
yeah, it is,
When
but
he come to pray, for
They
that
choose
he
parts,
do
ignore the others.
yeah.
kind
So,
But
what is this?
part of
What is his goal? His goal is to fulfill his desire, right, or to attain something of the dunya. That's the
for
goal of
some
the
people, but then there's also these other philosophies that just kind of fill in, like, I mean, there's all sorts of like different isms where that instructs how you behave with people. Feminism, liberalism, conservatism, all of that fills in the void that's created when you ignore the Quran and Sunnah in the aspects of your life outside of the masjid. So, does that make a little bit of sense?
Could be convenience driving it too.
And a huge part of it is it's driven by society.
Mm.
Acceptance of society, what is the most beneficial for society. And we know that's problematic because society tends to change a lot,
Mhm.
right? It's subjective.
Yep.
Whatever we all agree on is correct at this time will change at some point. And so that's where you have the lack of objective morality. You have subjective. It depends on what society is. And then, you've got people after power, people after money, people after love and acceptance. All of those things will replace your pursuit, getting the satisfaction of Allah.
Any more questions?
And just something I like to add too, like with the whole minor shirk and secularism, like one thing that is like people don't really talk about too is kind of that inflation of self. I always find that like as a good barometer, even if you feel like, I'm not secular, I'm not stuff like that too. It's kind of that idea because we live in or perceive like meritocracy. If I work hard enough, I'll get to this level. If I do this, then and you start taking Allah out of like certain things that he might be responsible for, or like, no, I did it. I if I work 6 hours and I'm the one who is able to get the job, I'm the one. I always find that it's kind of like, it doesn't get really discussed about, but it really does become like kind of that first step. Because we really do live like in a society where they'll tell you, if you work hard enough, you're the one who got it. You're the one who's able to do it.
The idiom, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps.
And so I was like, that's one thing when, especially living in America, you have to really like almost constantly remind yourself of it. Because you'll have other people tell you too. Like you do well in school, you do well at your job, well you got that promotion. You got that I don't know, you got that good grade or whatever. Which is fine, you shouldn't be lazy. But that is always, I feel like, the first step and something I have to constantly remind myself to. Because we are able to go do whatever we want theoretically. So it is, I don't know, it's just, that minor shirk is always just like very, you got to be very like careful of that. Because you can very slip into like, I didn't get this because I didn't work hard enough. Which is like a big thing.
What did Marcus Aurelius' assistant used to whisper in his ear? You're just a man. You're just a man. You're just a man. A reminder.
So, in closing, I've listed a couple of resources. Some of these are from the last workshop. There's a really good book if you are interested in particular about arguments refuting atheism. It's actually sold at the Hira book store. The Divine for Critical Minds, written by Rehan Zaidi.
What is it called again? Sorry.
The Divine for Critical Minds. And I know that kind of first portion of the presentation was was a little, complex. It's one that I have an easier time like explaining if I'm like, sitting with somebody and talking to them, because I remember at U of L all the time, a lot of my friends, whenever they would have like the kids from the humanities department, the philosophy majors asking these questions, it's like, Hamza, please, hey, can you talk to this guy? It's like, okay, having to cut my teeth on that a lot. Presentation style, I know it's a little complex to explain. I know I get a little, wordy with my explanations, but this book is written very well in a lot of like the common language. So I would definitely recommend it if you're interested in that. Hamza Zortzis, I believe I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. He also does a very good job, the Sapiens Institute, he does a very good job discussing atheism, the many arguments that you can bring against atheism, especially from the Islamic tradition. So, Jazakallah khairan. Are there any other questions before we kind of switch speakers? All right, Jazakallah khairan.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله أما بعد. As Hamza mentioned, this is a continuation of the workshop that we had a couple weeks ago. One was related to Aqidah, so we did the introduction to Aqidah, and we also had a workshop on teaching reverts. As part of that Aqidah, we wanted to also include some contemporary issues that have always existed but are more common nowadays, more apparent for us to see, and within the Muslim community is not talked about much, and you see it that it's become more and more prevalent. And going, off of the fact that we mentioned a lot of what happens with secularism, it stems from the fact that we want acceptance from society. We all kind of live together, let's coexist. You actually see those stickers on a lot of cars. It says coexist, and it has the different emblems and symbols that are showing the other religions. Just a couple things. One topic that I wanted to talk about is like interfaith relations. We are a minority that live in an ever diverse community and society, right? And so we need to find our place within that society. We need to work together with everyone around us. We cannot just kind of put ourselves in a hole, in a cave, away from everyone else. That really doesn't work. We are a minority, right? And we must not only get along with them, we need to be kind and nice and collaborate with them in the best way that we can serve the community. With that being said, we do not water down our religion, right, for their acceptance. We do not go to them, and you'll see this a lot. When interfaith is mentioned, you gotta kind of be careful, right? What is the organization that's doing the interfaith? What is their purpose? What is their objective behind it? What is their stance, right? Because you'll find many times when you have Muslims involved and it's like an interfaith organization that's been started by a group, you'll meet the Muslim and they're just like, let's talk about love, and we all have our own journeys to Allah, we all have different roads, we're going to the same destination but different routes, right? This is not the GPS we're talking about, right? You have to remember that if you are in this situation, you do not go and try to force your views on other people, but you need to be proud and confident that you are on haqq, that you are on the truth. And that when we talk about Islam, Allah says in the Quran, "Inna deena inda Allahi al-Islam," that the only deen in the sight of Allah that will be accepted is al-Islam. This is the only thing that will be accepted. So knowing this when you go into these areas will make sure that you're not watering down the religion, that you're not going to stay away from certain topics, because they're going to think it's wrong, right? They don't really agree with this, so I'm just going to not talk about it. I'm not going to mention it. That doesn't mean that you basically exclude yourself and seclude yourself. No, you can still be a functioning member of society. You can still go and have great impact and even work together with these folks to bring about positive change, right? If you look at what's going on in society right now and the pushing of certain agendas, right, you'll find that they're trying to push on children
in public schools to be taught certain things. We have anecdotes in certain states where the Christians, the churches and the mosques and the Islamic centers actually come together and petition against the public schools to make sure that we're not teaching our kids this content. So there are times when you can work together to basically improve society. But at the end of the day, we do not water down our religion when it comes to this. This should be the core thing to keep in mind, that we have the truth. This is the haqq. We're not going to stand down from it. This is an ayah from the Quran, right? قُلْ يَا أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ تَعَالَوْا إِلَى كَلِمَةٍ. Say, O Prophet, to the people of the book. And this should be the way that we approach this. O people of the book, let us come to common terms that we will worship none but Allah and associate none with Him. And so when you come to these conversations, the first thing should be on your mind, if you're going to agree when it comes to our beliefs, we're going to agree on this principle. Not, hey, you have your truth and I have my truth. If it's not this, then you can collaborate outside of that. But the truth is that they're on batil, that they're on falsehood. What they're believing is wrong. But if they turn away, then say, bear witness that we have submitted to Allah alone. So letting it be known and not being shy from it. But at the end of the day, why did I start with collaborating and working with them and being nice and kind, and the fact that we are a minority in a very diverse society and community is because you do not lead with this in the sense that, oh, I'm Muslim, you're this, you're kafir. And no, you have to live with one another at the end of the day. So you need to make sure that you're able to deal with them. We do not hate them, for example, on a personal level because of what they believe. And we do not show them animosity because of it. But you also don't go to the other extreme. This is about balance. It's about knowing that you are on the haqq, that the only religion, the only faith, the only belief system that will be accepted on the Day of Judgment by Allah is al-Islam, the one who submitted himself to Allah alone. Now, I wanted to start with that to show we need to work with those in our community and society. But there's a very, very important topic when it comes to Aqidah and how we deal with those around us. Al-Walaa, wal-Baraa. How many people have heard of these terms? Alhamdulillah, mostly everyone has heard of it. It's not something that's talked about a lot in some of the masajid, like to the youth, right? And the importance of it. Let's kind of define what is it, right? Al-Walaa means to have complete loyalty and allegiance to Allah and that which is connected to Allah. So Allah, al-Islam, the Muslims, because these are all connected to Allah. So you have complete loyal and allegiance. And there should not be any other loyalty or allegiances that supersedes this, that takes the place of this, or is superior to this. Everything should be related to that. If you love someone, you love them for the sake of Allah. You love them for the fact that they are Muslim, right? Even if you have non-Muslim family members, for example, you love them because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has enjoined upon us ties of kinship, right? So everything should go back to that. And the opposite, you have al-Baraa. Al-Baraa is to free yourself, to disassociate yourself and disavow from shirk and kufr and the people of shirk and kufr. The people of disbelief, the people that are polytheists. So this is very important. When it comes to how we deal with the community, the scholars will tell you that you should not have this sort of deep, intimate friendships, close ties with people of shirk and people of kufr. Your closest friends, those that you love the most around you, should be Muslim. Because this is part of your Aqidah, that you love and you prioritize Allah and that which is connected to Allah. And you free yourself from that which is not connected to Allah.
I was just going to ask, it ties into this, but also your last point, when you mentioned through your experience of interfaith, you're supposed to be confident, but also don't force your views on others. So how would we do that, combining that with this? If we hate this idea of kufr so much, then if some of us have family who are non-Muslim, how would you say, through your experience, is the best way to walk that line?
The best way is always through balance, right? It's always through balance. This, the reason why it's under Aqidah, because it's a credo. It's in your heart, right? Doesn't mean that you necessarily start going to all of them now. It's like, I hate you, right? That's not what you do. But it's your beliefs. It's your creed. It's what kind of directs you. And that's why I brought it to the point that you should not be having close, intimate friendships and ties with the people of shirk and kufr. And even if you're working with them, in your heart, you're not loyal to them. You're not allegiant to them. Because you know at the end of the day that they're denying the Creator, right?
Just maybe add to that. I think the best example is Ibrahim alayhi salam.
I have it on the next slide. Right. Go ahead, continue, Shah.
I don't know,
You have another...
No, I think if you feel that's family or friend, to listen to the da'wah and this is, you keep going with them.
Yeah.
But if you feel like they stuck with the shirk and kufr, I have to be a little bit far away.
Yeah. And so the thing is, you do not disattach yourself like completely. We're talking about what's in your heart, right? We're talking about the love and the loyalty and the allegiance that you have with them. If there's a friend that you've known for a very long time, you don't want to cut off the opportunity there is for da'wah. You continue with them. But we should not have that our circle, especially for, you know, the youth that have like friends from high school and so on. Your close friends should not be filled with them. That these are the only ones that you have, that you're the most intimate with, that they are your closest friends.
I was just gonna add, you can tell me what you think. The best thing you can do is be a good example to them. Like, let's say they're at work, you spoke to them a few times about Islam, they still continue that. You be the best Muslim you can be at work, you pray your salah, they're seeing all that, and that's a form of da'wah as well.
I'm going to add one more thing to this thing. So I also think it's a very complex issue because there's a lot of factors and variables that play into this. So I'd also add that you try to educate yourself, as in medical education, Islamic education, in terms of learning your deen and learning about other things as well. For example, there will be certain situations where there's just a lot of detail that, like, you can't just have a person tell you exactly, hey Adam, if the situation is that way, you do this, and if it's that way, you do this. It can just give you some guiding principles, and then you as a person will have to gauge the situation and see how you deal with it. For example, one of your family members is not Muslim. For example, let's say somebody's mother, and it's her birthday. Does that mean I should cut her off because my mom is a Muslim? So this is like, al-Baraa, and celebrating birthdays and doing rituals and the birthday candy, again, Baraa, but she's my mom. So how do I balance this? So for example, some people might find the balance as in, okay, I can go and spend some quality time with my mom. I can go take her shopping. I can get her gifts, tell her, hey, like happy birthday. But I can also not take part in the celebration or the ritual or play music. I can play my own Quran for her. I could use this chance to. So there's like this always fine line because this whole area is a very gray area. So the guiding principles that will prioritize your way of thinking would be something that we just have to learn. That, for example, okay, priority number one is I have to be there for my mom. This is because Allah has ordered me to, be dutiful to my parents. This is priority number one. It takes precedence over anything else. But then, okay, I have a second priority. I should not be interacting with all these rituals and partaking, all of them and just being happy and spending time. For example, if they want to go to a bar or they want to celebrate at a place where it doesn't agree with my creed. So
well, you can go to your mother and tell her, I don't believe in this, but I love you to be with you. To make da'wah, she knows this is not in a Muslim way, and this is. But
so this is situational.
A lot of.
So it's situational. So I would add as well, like Brother Muhammad said, and like the brother here said. So this is something that has to do with social psychology and just emotional intelligence. Even though this is the truth, that I don't agree with you in this, but I love you as my mom. So being a smart or like an emotionally intelligent person, you should not start and lead with that sentence. You can't just start with, hey mom, I don't agree with you in this thing, but I love you. It's actually smart to do like Allah mentioned in the ayah, to start the other way around. You know what? You're my mom, I love you. You start with a common ground. You build that foundation first. And then you select a situation where, okay, when is a good situation to talk about this and when is not a good time to talk about this. the level of detail. It's just like very situational and very detailed. And you will be the best person who will be able to gauge this kind of balance and that fine line.
Yeah.
And another thing is like Omar said, it's very situational, but so Islam is a way of life, and it comes with a lot, right? And for somebody that doesn't, that is a disbeliever, like if you're speaking to your parents, like this is a lot to throw at them at once. So you going from like, okay, like for example, Christmas, that's like, I'm not celebrating Christmas at all. Like I won't, like, you know, like I'll go upstairs, like I'll, you know, spend time with the family, but there's quality time, but I won't be giving presents, they won't be giving me presents, I won't be like dressing in green and red. But when it's her birthday, like I'll give her a gift, and I'll spend some time with her. But whenever they're like doing the candles and stuff, like I'm not singing happy birthday. Like I'm there where we went out to eat as a family. I'm not gonna be clapping and happy birthday and stuff. So balance,
show presence and support.
exactly, right?
You know,
And not like for example, her knowing like, oh, like I don't really celebrate birthdays, but I'm doing this for you, right? This is another good thing. But you can't just like, okay, like obviously like Christmas, like this completely contradicts, you know, like Christianity, and it's completely different. So like the other things, you can't just like say it all at once. Like, okay, yeah, I won't be doing this, I won't be doing this, I won't be doing this. They're gonna be like, whoa. So you have to like slowly like incorporate these things and let it be known.
Lamine, do you have a question?
Can a Muslim say, you know, that I love my country, even though it could be a non-Muslim country? For example, he was born here in America. He says, I love America and I want to show my patriotism, right? My loyalty to America. Is that against al-Walaa or al-Baraa?
So it is. I mean, the principle of al-Walaa wal-Baraa is you should have complete loyalty and allegiance to Allah and that which is connected to Allah. And of course, you're loyal to other things, but no other loyalty should be above this. No other loyalty should supersede this. And obviously, we can see with our many countries out there what happens when you have this nationalistic, you know, kind of mindset, where you're loyal to your nation and so on. That's a whole other, you know, discussion, political, if you will.
No, not to be loyal. There's a difference. Like, you can love your nation, but you won't like participate or you won't show loyalty, even though something like there's something to show loyalty to, and it's bad. You won't do it because you know that this is against the deen. You love your country, but you're not going to show loyalty to something that shouldn't be shown loyalty to, right? Like,
is it against the religion to show loyalty to your country?
Basically, that's my question. Basically, is it against Walaa wal-Baraa to say that I love my country, right? Even though you're not going to participate in something that will go against the deen.
I love Louisville because I was here long time and I would like to. I love it. I mean, not does mean I don't have Walaa and Baraa.
Yeah. So the principle of Walaa and Baraa is complete loyalty, right? So that is the number one thing to Allah. And then you dissociate yourself from people that do not believe in Allah. Now, when you have love and those are minor things, right? Yeah. Now, when that love goes against it, then that's clear for you to see, right?
Right. Because when the Prophet ﷺ, when he was about to migrate to Medina, right, he turned around and then I believe he made a statement that, you know, if it wasn't for his people kicking me out, right, you know, I would stay, showing his love for Mecca.
But you love to play something and you loyal to something.
Yeah.
It's
different.
It's totally different things.
Okay.
Like you love dunya overall, not only places.
If some of the companions, or I guess some of the people around the Prophet ﷺ, when that hijrah was happening, right? If they were loyal to their land and their family and to all of that, then they stayed. They didn't go, right? So that's what the difference between the love and loyalty, complete loyalty, especially.
Okay, can I add one last thing? There's also a difference between the creed, like Brother Muhammad is talking about. This is the belief in the heart and the action based on that creed. So the belief, this is what we're discussing right now.
Yeah,
What
so
I
belief.
internally believe. If somebody asked me, what do you really believe in, Omar, this is what I truly believe in. But what will my action be? That's a different story. Because an action could be, for example, if I was born here, yeah, I would love my country. I would love the U.S. That's fine. That does not mean that I fully support the U.S. and everything that they are doing.
Right,
but it's
right.
my country,
Yeah.
and because I love my country, I want to make it better by making da'wah, by becoming an active member of society and whatnot.
Yeah.
But if it's the U.S., for example, asks me, "Hey Omar, I want you to go do something that is against Islam," of course I'll be like, "No, I'm against this." If Saudi Arabia asks me to do the same thing, no, I'm against this. If whoever person asks me to do something that is against Islam, I will not do it. So that's the wala and bara.
I have a small example of Muhammad Ali in the 60s when they forced him to go to the war in Vietnam. And he refused because he said that's against my religion. So and they put him in the jail for 1 year. So this is wala and bara.
Very good example. Arif, did you?
You brothers covered it.
Okay. As Anwar was mentioning earlier, we have the best of examples with our father Ibrahim alayhi salam, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran. كانت لكم أسوة حسنة في إبراهيم والذين معه إذ قالوا لقومه إنا براء منكم ومما تعبدون من دون الله كفرنا بكم وبدا بيننا وبينكم العداوة والبغضاء أبدا حتى تؤمنوا بالله وحده. You already have an excellent role model, an example in Ibrahim alayhi salam, and the people that were with him when they said to their people, we totally disassociate ourselves from you and shun whatever idols you worship besides Allah. So this goes to show that it's not only the shirk and kufr, but also the people of it, because of their connection with that. The same way that you love and you are loyal to those connected to Allah, you disavow yourself, you disassociate yourself from those that disbelieve in Allah. And they said, we reject you, right? So this is the principle, the belief that we have, it should be in our aqidah that drives us. It's what's in our hearts. Now the dealings of how this is carried out, that is a different thing. It depends on the situation, whether you have family or friends that are, non-Muslim, for example, or how you deal with it in the community. But this is your creed, this is your compass, this is what guides you when it comes to complete loyalty. Any other questions or thoughts on al-Walaa wal-Baraa before we move on? This is by no means in-depth, right, coverage of this topic, but really just wanted to bring that up as an idea, that it's part of our Aqidah. It's a topic that's not really discussed a lot. Another topic that I wanted to discuss that's related to Aqidah, that's become very, very prevalent nowadays, is astrology, and tied to that is like horoscopes. It's become so common, it's everywhere. You'll find it everywhere, and you'll find non-Muslims and Muslims alike, even without knowing what it is, kind of falling prey to this, right? Especially on social media. It's like wildfire. And there's hadith narrated by Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if anyone acquires any knowledge of astrology, he acquires a branch of sihr, of which he gets more as long as he continues to do so. Now, what is astrology? Astrology is the study of the movements and relative positions of celestial bodies, right? Looking out at the stars and the moon and the sun and so on, and this being interpreted as having an influence on human affairs and the natural world. So that's the key piece, right? It's not that it's prohibited to study the universe or the galaxies or the stars or the moon, the sun, so on as a science, but it's when you're making the connection that this has an influence. This by itself, having this information, has an influence on human affairs and the natural world.
This is Munajjimin, huh?
Yes. And related to that, horoscopes is they take basically this astrology and all the information that comes from that, and they say this is a forecast can be made of a person's future typically including a delineation of character. Oh, you are this, you will be, or you are this kind of person. You're always mad, or you're always this, right? Based on this. And it sounds ridiculous, wallah, to hear it. But if you go out there, especially on the vast internet and social media and so on, you'll find everyone kind of falling prey to this because it's come so common, right? And you'll have, it's, you know, no one is using the term astrology and this influences your character. They'll use these signs and so on, right? It becomes like a personality trait at that point. And based on the relative positions of the stars and the planet at the time you were born. So subhanAllah, it's like our principle, our aql should reprimand this, right? Like there's no way this is, there's no way this works with our Aqidah, right? There, as we know, there is no power, no authority except the power and authority of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the only one that allows things to happen, that makes things happen, who has complete power over anything. So now something that He has created the universe, He has created the heavens and the earth, right? And now we're trying to attribute to that based on patterns and studying and so on, that this is what's going to happen. Another, quick topics that I wanted to discuss is superstitions and amulets, right? This has also become very culturally, it's tied to culture nowadays, and it's kind of spreading all around. And there are clear hadith. This is not something that's new. This is because with social media and the internet, you'll see it spreading everywhere, and it's not being tied to the fact that this is an aqidah related issue. We have two hadith here. It was narrated from Zainab, the wife of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, from Abdullah, that he said, I heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam say that spells, amulets, and love charms are shirk. So the Prophet ﷺ connected the amulets, wearing objects and things for protection, he connected that to shirk. Because you're taking that which belongs to Allah and you're putting it and giving it to this object. And inshallah we'll define what amulets and so on are. Another hadith was narrated from Uqba bin Amir al-Juhani, that a group came to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to give bay'ah to him, and he accepted the bay'ah of 9 of them. There was 10 of them. He accepted the bay'ah of 9 of them. They said, O Messenger of Allah, you accepted the bay'ah of 9 but not 1. And so the Prophet ﷺ responded, he is wearing an amulet. So the man put his hand in his shirt and he took it off. Then the Prophet ﷺ accepted the bay'ah and he said, whoever wears an amulet has committed shirk. So an amulet, what is an amulet? It's an object, whether it's natural or man-made, which is believed to be endowed or has special powers to protect or bring good fortune. So I highlighted the portion there because that's a significant piece, right? You're now given this object that it has special powers to protect or bring you good fortune. This is clearly against our Aqidah. This is clearly against our deen. That you're giving the power that Allah has to this object. And these amulets can be carried on the person or kept in a place. So you put something in your car or in your house and you believe that this will protect you. And put a picture of it. That's like the most famous one that you'll see kind of around, supposed to protect you from evil eye and so on. And related to that is also superstition. So superstitions is a belief or way of behaving that is based on a fear of the unknown. This is where it comes from. It's irrational, of course. And a faith in magic or luck. A belief that certain events or things will bring good or bad luck. We know that, there's no power or authority for anything good or bad to happen except by Allah, except from Allah. I highlighted some of the examples there. One that I really wanted to talk about is when you hear a lot, it's like knock on wood. You see people say this a lot. They don't understand actually the history behind it. Even Muslims, they'll be like, knock on wood. We just think it's something that people say for good luck, but it actually comes from the wood of like the cross. This is something that they would say, and they would believe that knocking on the wood of the cross would protect them or bring them good luck. And so that's why it's said a lot. Seeing a black cat is like brings you bad luck and so on. There are many, many examples. At the end of the day, the leading principle, right? We have this adhkar that the Prophet ﷺ told us that we should repeat. Bismillah tawakkaltu ala Allah wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. That principle right there just renders everything that I've covered now when it comes to amulets, when it comes to superstitions, void. Right? In the name of Allah, I have placed my trust in Allah. There is no might and no power except by Allah. You are not able to get good luck, bad luck based on objects or things that you put, things that you say, except by Allah.
Obviously, there's better phrases and dua, for example, but it's like the word good luck. Is that all right? Obviously, not something like knock on wood. But
yeah.
Just like good luck. You're just generally saying.
When I was putting together,
as Muslims, we can make dua, we can say better things.
Yeah.
But the phrase "good luck" is that I don't think we need to ask somebody.
Yeah. So when I was putting the presentation together, that's something that came to mind. We're not. It's one thing to just you're saying it out of habit, if you will. But if you look at like where it's coming from, it's much better, much preferred that you make dua for the person, right? Like, but I think it's just become like a habit thing. And I'm not saying throwing a fatwa out of that saying good luck is now shirk, right? But it's where it's coming from, right? If you really look at it in a deep way, what do you mean good luck? Like, break a leg and all of that. Well, it came to my mind if I wanted to talk about that, but really it's the principle, and to be mindful of the things that you're saying, because it could affect your belief. And actually, one thing before I go to Arif that I wanted to mention, probably this is basic. Every one of us sitting here knows this. But the reason why I wanted to bring it up is if we're not having these discussions with our children, the future generations that are seeing this on social media and on the internet, you have a connection with the deen to where you're able to see that this is wrong. It's clear as day for you that this is wrong. But in future generations, it'll be murky waters, right? They will not be able to make that connection. They just think it's horoscopes, whatever, right? I was born in December, I'm this, I'm that, this is my character. It's a fun thing that everyone does. So it's important for us, we are already an authority, right? Or we're going to be an authority. So this isn't really meant for you all. This is meant for you all to disseminate this information to those that you have authority over, those that are in your family, especially for future generations. This is something that I hold dear to my heart. There are many topics that we knew growing up and our parents knew growing up that never had to be discussed. But we live in a day and age that we cannot shy away from discussing these things. As basic as it may sound, right? Al-Walaa, wal-Baraa, like it's so basic. But we have to have these conversations, not for us, but for the future generations. Because you can no longer say, well, that's you don't ask that kind of question, right? We will get all kinds of questions asked. And if you don't answer it, they'll go to the internet and they'll find that information. So this is really pertinent information for the future, not necessarily only for yourself.
What do you say to a person who is not Muslim?
Who's not Muslim what?
Like, for example, Brother brought up the point of saying good luck.
You tell him bad luck. No, I'm just kidding.
Break a leg.
Ahmad really means it when he says break a leg. Again, those are words, right? All the best. I don't think that I'm sitting here telling you to eliminate good luck from your vocabulary, right? It's one thing to believe something, and then the words that you're saying, at least just being mindful of it, that when you say that, you don't mean like you'll have this luck that comes from nowhere.
Yeah. I think it derives from like a genuine good phrase, like have a good day, like
well wishes,
well wishes, like.
And even if you do want to take it from I always do the may Allah, like whatever they were doing, like may Allah help you. And even if they're non-Muslim, it's like the same thing as saying like God bless. Like I don't know, that's why I changed mine to just like may Allah. If you want something, help you. You're good to go. At worst, you'll just get a crazy look, and then you'll just keep walking. So, I mean,
although we as Muslims in this country might be a minority community, I would still encourage, like, okay, somebody, like I'm about to do a task, they say good luck, I'm going to say Bismillah. I'm not going to be on the back foot about being shy about once again, I'm not correcting them outright. I'm doing my own thing where it's like I'm not going to fall in line with the majority. I'm going to, Bismillah, something like that, other than just being on the back foot where it's like, I don't want to make them feel uncomfortable. You're not making them feel uncomfortable by, standing on, correct behavior. Like, especially like in the context, like here in Kentucky, like in the South, if you do something with conviction, more often than not, they're going to respect you. So, I'm not going to go out of my way to like, I want to make them feel good luck. No, Bismillah. Well, what does that mean? Hey, I'll explain it to you once or twice. I don't mind. But I'm not going to be on the back foot where it's like, I'm kind of shy. No. Bismillah.
What about the amulet that has the Quran ayats?
So that's, as I was looking into this, there's actually not a consensus from the scholars when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Some of the scholars say that because you are, at the end it's connected to Allah, that it's not prohibited, but there are some texts that indicate that it's makruh to do that, and there are some scholars that have said, even in the earliest generations, right, from the Salaf, that you shouldn't do this, it's prohibited. So I didn't bring it up for a reason, right? This needs a more in-length discussion when it comes to that. Any other questions or thoughts?
But that's good da'wah when you said Bismillah.
Yeah.
So people will ask, what do you mean? So you said in the name of Allah.
That's all the topics that I had that I wanted to discuss just for the sake of time. May Allah grant us beneficial knowledge and steadfastness in this country. Ameen.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Wanted to record a revised segment for our presentation last Sunday, specifically regarding the first argument that I discussed that is found in the Islamic tradition regarding the argument of causality, which is presented against the disbelievers. I wanted to make this revision in the spirit of a hadith found in Sahih Muslim, in which Ubaydullah related that Abdullah ibn Mas'ud reportedly said that no one narrates something to people in which it's difficult for them to understand, but that becomes a trial for some of them. In other words, I wanted to do a far better job laying out the first argument. The second argument, the teleological argument, the argument that the universe is created and fine-tuned with a purpose and with express design, is generally the more popular argument, and it is the simpler argument to kind of lay forth to those who may disbelieve. So in my presentation, I had discussed that atheists in the United States generally fall into three categories. The first category is those people who, either because of personal trauma or because they listen to anecdotes from other people, develop an opposition to organized religion. The second category of people are those who defer to who they believe are authority figures that influence, that persuade them into not taking an interest in religion. The third category, which really is the category that the arguments are more so concerned with, are those who adopt a materialist Aqidah. Now, the first question may be, what do you mean by materialist Aqidah? In general, for human beings, there are three sources of knowledge. The first source, which is the source of knowledge that materialists only, or claim they only use, is sensory knowledge. In other words, knowledge that is gained by one of or multiple of the five senses: seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, smelling. The scientific method, for example, is primarily based on observation of sight. It could use other of the senses, but typically you are observing how something works. The second source of knowledge is rational knowledge. In other words, knowledge that is understood, that is commonly understood. Doesn't matter, culture, place of origin. All sane human beings with a functioning brain can learn through rational thinking. I'll give you a couple of simple examples to kind of illustrate this. So I come to you and I say I have three boxes: box A, box B, and box C. I say that box A and box B weigh the same. I then say that box B and box C weigh the same. I then tell you box A and box C weigh the same. You wouldn't argue about box A and box C, I don't believe they weigh the same. You rationally understand that, okay, box A, box B, box C weigh the same. Ergo, okay, it makes sense that box A and box C weigh the same. You don't have to get three physical boxes. You don't have to take out a weight or a scale and weigh the boxes. You don't have to stand there. I need to watch you place each box on the scale. Rationally, it makes sense, and you would accept that. Another example is the part of something is not greater than the whole of something. In other words, the leg of a chair is not greater than the entire chair itself. The wall of a house is not greater than the entire house itself. This is rational knowledge. The third source of knowledge, which as Muslims we accept, but atheists would reject, is the third source of knowledge is being from revelation. We come to know things through wahi, through revelation. Now, for that third category of atheists, the materialists, the ones that, they will, sit there and say, well, you can't hear or see or smell God. They make these arguments against Muslims not understanding the Islamic Aqidah, and because of kind of cultural baggage that they carry with them through dealing with the majority religion in this country, which is Christianity. In Christianity, they have made the mistake of, making Allah appear to be like his creation. The depictions of Jesus we know about, the kind of just giving Allah human traits. This error that the Christians make colors the way atheists would approach Muslims. The atheists have to understand, though, that in Islam, we don't claim that there's sensory knowledge of Allah. Another word you may have heard is empirical knowledge. Empirical knowledge and sensory knowledge, they mean the same thing. We understand that Laysa kamithlihi shay'an, Allah is not similar whatsoever to his creation. When a'udhu billah, we don't attempt to depict Allah. We don't try to, another kind of big word you may hear is anthropomorphize. We don't try to treat Allah like a human. When a'udhu billah. How we come to know Allah is through that second source, that rational knowledge, as well as from wahi. The first argument that I had laid out is an argument regarding existence. In the Quran, in Surah al-Tur, there are two verses that pose challenges to the disbelievers. And it has to do with, where did mankind come from? How did mankind come into existence? So the two verses pose essentially three options. And these three options are ones that clearly don't make sense rationally. They are, were you created from nothing? Are you your own creator? And did you create the heavens and the earth? From these three arguments, let's kind of set a little bit of the lay of the land so that we can kind of understand these arguments that the Quran poses beautifully. In Islam, we understand that Allah is outside of time and space. This is different than other religions. Once again, how Christianity has, tried to bring Allah to be similar to his creation. Other religions have done this as well. You look at Hinduism, you're depicting multiple gods, as elephants and blue beings with 4 arms and so on and so forth. Allah being outside of time and space, that means that Allah is not affected by cause and effect. Cause and effect is something that is a reality within this dunya, within time and space. So the three challenges: were you created from nothing? Now, mathematically, rationally, it makes no sense to say that something comes from nothing. Mathematically, you can represent this by adding, 4 or 5 zeros together. Well, if I do 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0. Is that 4? No, that's still 0. You cannot claim. It makes no rational sense, nor do you have anything empirically to prove that something just spontaneously appears from nothingness, right? Through our daily lives, we don't just walk by, walk into our bedroom and then a card just spontaneously appears, mixed in with the walls and with the bed. You don't walk outside and, spontaneously a sun just appears like in your driveway. It does not make sense rationally, nor is there anything even comparable in the dunya to suggest that something can come from nothing. So rationally, makes no sense. Are you your own creator? That would suggest that somehow at one point in time, something both existed and did not exist. And then, 1 second later, it just, pops up. Once again, it, that spontaneity, it does not make any sense. Looking at kind of daily life, I did not give birth to myself. My mother did not give birth to herself. There is cause and effect. So that second challenge, we would realize, I can't claim that I am my own creator. The third challenge has to do with something known as infinite regress. So, infinite regress has to do with, where did I come from? I came from my mother. Where did she come from? Oh, she came from her mother. Where did she come from? She came from her mother. So on and so forth. Infinite regress is just claiming that somehow, we're just moving back in time infinitely. In the real world, nothing in the universe is infinite. Everything is finite. There's a start and an end. So the third challenge to claim that, we're just in this infinite regress rationally does not make sense. There's nothing to serve as an example in the real world. Rather, it is understood that something created time and space, created that chain of cause and effect. And that something, which is Allah is both necessary to have started the cause and effect, and Allah has to be eternal. You can't just claim, Allah is a created thing, because once again, that's just one more link in that infinite regress. Once again, the first argument, I know is quite complex. I pray to Allah that this revision of explaining that argument does a better job of presenting it. One of the things that we should always keep in mind is in the Islamic Aqidah, and I can't remember the name of Allah off the top of my head that translates as this, but we understand that Allah is beginningless, eternal. Beginningless, eternal. And so that rational argument does well to help the mind recognize, okay, Allah is necessary, Allah is eternal. I ask Allah to make the entire presentation beneficial, to grant us the conviction, the knowledge, and the arguments necessary to keep our iman high, to help us in any situation in which we are giving da'wah, we are answering questions from new Muslims. May Allah put benefit in the Muslimin. May Allah accept all that is correct and on haqq from our presentation. May Allah forgive us for any errors in our dialogue. Know that those errors are from the shaitan. Jazakallah khairan. Wassalamu alaikum.